I'm Tom Baker, this is Chasing Cars, and today I'm going to do one of the most requested reviews here on the Chasing Cars channel, the Ssangyong Musso Ute. I'd actually never driven one of these things until this week. Now I've driven two. We've had the Red Ultimate, we've had the Green Adventure. I've been immersing myself in Musso land, and for all the people who came into the comments over the last few years and requested this review, I now really get it. For well under 50 grand here in Australia, particularly if you're an ABN holder, particularly when Ssangyong is running one of its sales, these things give you a lot of ute for your money. That being said, in dual cab land, occasionally you do get what you pay for. What do I mean by that? Will all be explained in today's review of the Musso. We'll be looking at the interior, the back seat, the tub, the running costs, and the driving. Should you purchase this affordable dual cab? I will let you know. Before we get started, hit subscribe. Chasing Cars, honest reviews of your next car. Brought to you by Budget Direct. Let's jump up into the Musso Ultimate. The car I've got here has all the fruit, the XLV pack, which lengthens the wheelbase and the tub and increases the payload, plus a $3,000 luxury package, which is going to give you a sunroof, premium leather, power adjustment for the front seats, extra heating for the rear seats, plus dual zone climate control. Even with all this stuff, we're looking at $49,500 drive away here in Australia. The red paint does add a little bit extra, but if you're an ABN holder, there's a further discount being offered at the moment. So no matter how you cut it, this thing is tens of thousands of dollars less expensive than the likes of a Ranger or a Hilux. So I think it definitely demands our consideration, doesn't it? Particularly because when you jump up in here, you don't get the sensation that this is cheap, but that is effectively my feeling here. You jump into this, it definitely feels mainstream. It definitely feels like it's ready to do some work. It's not a luxury vehicle, but it's built well, everything's screwed together. This particular vehicle has no squeaks or rattles whatsoever. It's perfectly nice in here and comfortable. We are sitting on leather, as I mentioned, and that power adjustment you get in the luxury pack is worth it because you really can get the seats into a superior driving position compared to the manual adjustment. You've got under thigh angle adjustment here. You have power lumbar, which is really great to see, and even heating and cooling for the front seats. That is properly premium and really good on a hot day. Leather steering wheel with perforations as well. It's a pretty big wheel, feels a bit like a bus. But you look through that to a 12.3-inch digital instrument cluster, which is pretty fully featured, to be honest, and you got another 12-inch screen up here. This does look a bit aftermarket, but it has wired Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, which work perfectly well. No inbuilt navigation, however, so you will need to use the maps from your phone. Down here, another sort of perforated fake leather pad, which is kind of nice, and you've got climate controls for dual zone. It is sort of touch-based, which is a little bit annoying, but it works well enough. Your materials are actually fairly decent, sort of soft touch on the top here, hardier on the doors. It's a ute, that doesn't matter. But we're sitting under a sunroof, which is cool. Plenty of storage space. Your switchable 2 high, 4 high, and 4 low down here. USB-C ports, more storage in between the seats, and decent sized door bins. So again, you are not feeling like you're in some kind of stripped out special in the Musso. It feels like it can go toe to toe with something like a Hilux SR5 with premium interior pretty well. And compared to the likes of the GWM Ute, or especially the LDV T60, the Chinese utes, this Korean Ssangyong is a cut above in terms of its perceived cabin quality. Moving to the second row here, you can easily see it's spacious enough. So I'm 6 foot or 183 centimeters. Headroom is no issue whatsoever. The driving seat is in my position and legroom is okay. If there was a particularly tall driver or someone with long legs, it would get a little bit tighter back here than some other utes, but at the moment it's fine. Tow room is good. There is one problem, however, in the center, and that's that the Musso crazily only has a lap belt there. So in terms of your lap sash belts, really only 4 usable seats in this car. That being said, it does have rear side airbags. The old Amarok never had rear side airbags, did it? And we kind of had to keep reviewing that car year after year after year. So just pointing this out as a bit of a flaw. So what I would do is not use the seat probably, and just flip down this armrest here with a couple of cup holders. You do have rear air vents, no more USB-C ports in the back, or any USB ports for that matter. Moving around the back of the Musso Ute now, this one has been fitted with a popular option, the $1,500 XLV pack, which lengthens the tub, it lengthens the wheelbase, and it increases the payload as well. Plus you get an extra 20 Newton meters of torque, always nice. Now check this out, under 50 grand, and yet we've got a damped tailgate. I don't understand why utes that cost 30 grand more can't have a feature like that, just in case you drop it. As you can see, it's lined. We do have 4 tie down points, plus we have a soft tonneau cover on this car, which we've just pulled back so you can see the load bay here. I'll put the dimensions on screen now. For a fairly basic agricultural vehicle designed to do some hard work, it's well kitted out for a car of this price. Servicing the Musso is pretty inexpensive thanks to its cap price servicing program. Each of the first 5 annual services will set you back $375 for a 5-year, 75,000 kilometre total of $1,875. The cap price servicing scheme itself lasts for 7 years total, as does the unlimited kilometre warranty. Diesel consumption was reasonable, although nothing particularly special. Ssangyong claims 8.6 litres per 100 kilometres on the combined cycle, though we saw early double figures in our mixed driving for a fuel range of about 750 k's. Alright, let's go for a drive in the Ssangyong Musso and see what this vehicle is really like out on the road. And I'm interested to do this because in a big way, the Musso isn't actually that much like many of its dual cab rivals on the market. That's because when Ssangyong of Korea was developing this vehicle, they didn't actually start with the Ute. That's normally where you would start. Instead, they did the Rexton wagon first. So they kind of began with a slightly more refined, more comfortable vehicle, and they developed the Ute off the wagon. Now, this isn't a unibody SUV. It is still a body on frame vehicle, and it's set up for towing and off-roading. But in some ways, you can actually feel that wagon basis in the way the vehicle drives, because I think it actually has a slightly higher level of refinement and a higher level of comfort than many of the other Utes on the market. There's also another big thing up the Musso's sleeve that helps in that department, and that's that we have coil springs at the rear end rather than the leaf springs that we find in most Utes. Normally the Ute has leaf springs and then the wagon version has coils. You look at something like a Ford Ranger, that's on leafs, and then the Everest is on coils. We do occasionally see other Utes on coil springs. Examples also include the Nissan Navara, and that decision does usually improve the ride quality, but there's normally a trade-off when it comes to payload. In the case of the Musso, there is a small trade-off. The payload is 790 kilos if you go for, I guess, the comfort-oriented coil springs, but you can add the XLV pack, which lengthens the tray and also increases that payload back up further. And I'll put our numbers on screen now so you can have a look at them. But the point is, the Musso actually rides really quite well compared to most of its rivals. I actually think in certain circumstances, the ride would be among the best dual cabs on the market, and it would really take one of the top end vehicles like a Ranger or an Amarok on all-terrain tires and smaller wheels to equal the level of comfort you get out of the Musso. So it's a little bit of a surprise to this vehicle to find that it's actually quite refined and it rides fairly well. There are other surprises too, one of them being the 2.2 litre turbocharged diesel 4-cylinder engine in this vehicle. Now, Ssangyong developed this engine by themselves. They didn't tap into the Mercedes-Benz engine category as they used to do quite often as a brand. And this engine is actually, again, in some circumstances, one of the better sorted powertrains on the Australian market. It only makes 133 kilowatts of power, so quite far off the benchmarks with diesel V6s in this segment. But with the XLV package, you're getting 420 Newton meters of torque, and it's a really good partner to the torque converter automatic transmission in this vehicle. What you're going to notice if you're coming out of a Ute, like a Hilux for instance, the step-off acceleration in the Musso is really excellent. You have a lot of torque available straight away. The first gear seems to step off extremely well from the line. The Musso makes easy progress and the shifts themselves are really slick. I've noticed some others have talked about the occasional rough shift in the Musso, but I didn't experience that actually in my time testing this Ute. I've been happy with the performance. Now, it's not a super quick vehicle as you start to accelerate hard towards the triple digits, but running around town, you notice that it does step off really well and it does hold its own on a country road too. The steering is fairly vague in this vehicle. We expect that in this segment, and the steering wheel itself is quite massive, so you need to put in a fairly decent input into the wheel to get a result at the front wheels. But it's all perfectly fine, and the control surfaces have actually been balanced quite well, such that the Musso becomes a fairly easy and intuitive vehicle to drive with not a lot of practice. I definitely think among dual cab Utes, it would easily be in the top half for dynamic polish, which is amazing considering the price of this vehicle. Refinement 2 is average. I would say that we're hearing a fair amount of wind noise coming off the mirrors of this vehicle. You do have that trademark 4-cylinder diesel rattle from the engine, which is, no surprise in a vehicle of this configuration. But the cars that we've had on test have been built better than some other utes that we see coming through our garage as well. But there is a bit of a compromise, and that's when it comes to safety.
We do need to talk about safety because the Musso has not been rated by ANCAP. You do get a number of safety features included. The list takes in 6 airbags, Ford's autonomous emergency braking with pedestrian, vehicle and cyclist detection, blind spot monitoring, rear cross traffic alert, lane departure warning, and a 360-degree camera, which is decent. But we just don't have data on crashworthiness, so there remains something of a question mark. And then there's the rear lap belt with no sash, which for us would pretty much render the middle seat in the back there ornamental.
So, a verdict. Should you buy a Ssangyong Musso ute? Well, if you only need a medium-duty pickup, then this thing should be on your list to test drive at the very least. It's wildly cheaper than things like the Hilux, Ranger. Sure, it doesn't hit the absolute high highs of a Ranger or Amarok V6, but it's just not that different to something like a Triton or a Navara, despite being far more affordable. And in some ways, it actually is a better vehicle than those more established nameplates here in the Australian market. The fact that there is a small but cult following of the Musso makes a lot of sense to me. So yeah, I would certainly have this vehicle on my list. Very keen to know your thoughts. Let me know down below the video in the comments. While you're there, hit subscribe and the notification bell. And as always, thanks for watching Chasing Cars.